Billy D here with another one of our exciting pre-Cal Jam podcasts, sponsored again by our biggest sponsor, people I love over at Standard Process, keeping us all healthy. Well, good morning, Dane Wigington.
Good morning, Billy.
And you're really going over probably one of the topics that's probably one of the dearest things to my heart. And I've been noticing this for, I would say, at least 25 years. I mean, I actually had an employee that used to listen to the Art Bell Show all the time, and he would bring that up. And at first I thought he was a little loony too, but then I started looking into it, and I came to the reality that this geoengineering thing, also known as chemtrails, but we're trying to get away from that term, I guess, is actually a real phenomena, which is basically weather modification, or does it go deeper than that?
If people hear the weather modification term, they think of some small regional project, and geoengineering implies weather modification on a scale that makes it climate modification globally. So again, the scope and scale of the programs can't be overestimated. Really, they're massive beyond comprehension, Billy. And on the terms, yeah, it is important to stick with the climate science terms, which is climate engineering, geoengineering, solar radiation management. I spent 20 minutes with a newspaper editor, an environmentally centered newspaper on the coast on Christmas Eve. It took me 20 minutes to get past the chemtrails term, which had him completely polarized that this was conspiracy theory and hoax. And once he understood that our side is about geoengineering, the science behind what's happening in our skies, then I made progress at that point. So
right, okay.
Anyway, yeah, semantics do matter.
Yeah, and I get that, and I've been using the term geoengineering a lot more. I don't use chemtrails that much anymore.
Or climate engineering. Climate engineering is a good term too, where people, that's pretty self-explanatory there. But anyway,
what were the other terms that you said again?
Climate engineering is a very good universal term. Solar radiation management, and if people search those terms, once you give that information to someone, they'll find hard science instead of disinformation.
Right. Why is it so hard for the average person to see something that's so blatantly obvious to you and I?
One of the primary reasons is these programs have been brought on over such a long period of time that people are simply used to seeing it. It's in every ad, every background for commercials on TV and so forth. And so people are quite conditioned to seeing this in the sky, and if you can remember what a natural sky truly looks like. So we need people to look back at old historical photos or photos without these trails all over the sky. We need them to investigate the subject of geoengineering and the amount of data to back it up, from 750 page congressional documents, presidential documents, or Senate documents as well. On geoengineeringwatch.org, we have a list of 150 patents. We have tutorials on a high bypass turbofan jet engine, which is all commercial carriers and all military tankers. That engine by design is a jet-powered fan. It's nearly incapable of making any condensation trail except under the most extreme circumstances. So people need to start looking up, comparing what they see from one day to the next, and challenge their sense of reason as to how you can have a grid pattern one day, Billy, and nothing the next. People need to start thinking with their sense of reason.
Okay, and when do you think really these whole geoengineering efforts really got started? I mean, was this something that started 30, 40 years ago, or how long has it been going on?
70 years. And we have Senate documents to back that up, and we can see fluctuations in global temperature that correlated directly with the onset of these programs. And we have that information posted at geoengineeringwatch.org. So what people need to understand, again, is we live on this planet, this spinning ball of rock in a very hostile environment because of a miraculous set of conditions, the atmosphere and the entire web of life. And if you
just a delicate balance, too. It's just it's amazing that people don't realize that.
It's called the energy balance, Earth's energy balance, which has been an equilibrium not seen in Earth's history the last 10 million years. It's been a very stable point in that energy balance, but it's been horribly disrupted, not just from climate engineering. I want to stress that. Again, all damage we do to the planet, in any way we alter the biosphere, we are altering that energy balance, from cutting down forests to putting 100 million tons of CO2 in the atmosphere every day, paving the planet, poisoning the oceans. That's all affecting the energy balance. But when you have programs that are intentionally affecting that balance and toxifying the entire planet at the same time, that's an all-out assault against life on Earth, period, and people need to see it as such.
Okay, so the big question for most people: what is the agenda?
Again, people need to really try to avoid dichotomous thinking, the black or white, this or that type of thinking, because
Okay.
there are many, many layers to this onion, and it's a mistake to try to put it into one category. So we have climate engineering is weather warfare, period. People need to see it as such. When you affect the climate in any region, you affect the entire system. But in fact, these programs are so total that there's nothing left untouched. So weather warfare has been used for many decades. We have historical proof of that from Project Popeye in Vietnam, Project Storm Fury. There's a long list of publicized programs. Climate engineering has been used to drought out sub-Saharan African countries for decades, forcing them to accept U.S. occupation. We have the Middle Eastern countries, every single one of which was droughted into a destabilized societal position and then toppled. We have leaders of those countries, in some cases on the floor of the UN, stating this is what's been happening with NATO weather modification programs. So we have weather warfare, and we have a manipulation of populations and that food supplies can be controlled and so forth. Bigger than all of this, though, we have what amounts to a power structure attempt to hide damage done to the climate system by inflicting yet more damage at the same time. And that is, we have methane mass expulsion happening from the Arctic right now that's filling the atmosphere, Billy. It's covering the planet like a layer of glass. Geoengineering has helped this cataclysm to happen, and they're using the same methods to try to hide it from the public as long as possible. And the most parallel example we have of that is the Corexit used in the Gulf of Mexico. You may remember that chemical, Corexit. You remember that
I don't
name?
remember that one. I remember paraquat, but not that one.
Okay, Corexit is banned throughout the globe. They used it in the Macondo oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico to try to hide that spill from the public as well as they could. Corexit helps the oil to sink to the bottom, keep it out of sight, out of mind, but environmental impact reports stated that that chemical made that situation 52 times more toxic. So why did they use it? Because they're more interested in hiding their crimes from the public than they are actually trying to mitigate the situation. Same is true with geoengineering. So when they can engineer cool downs like they did in Boston last year, remember all the headlines about the Boston snow last year?
Yeah.
Over and over and over. And so they'll show that to the public and confuse people as to the true state of the climate or the true extent of the damage to the climate. They didn't really talk much about the fact that we were 80 degrees, 90 degrees in California in the middle of winter with no snow in the Sierras. And now, of course, we've seen the antithesis of that. We've seen some precipitation in the west while we had, on Christmas Eve, Billy, we had temperatures of 40 degrees with rain at the North Pole while we had 74 or 5 degrees in Quebec, Canada. We had record temperatures all over the East Coast. I think 6,500 high temperature records were set. So the weather whiplash, the climate imbalance is getting radically worse by the day. Geoengineering is fueling that fire.
Okay, and then you keep using the word they. I mean, in your opinion, who is they?
Central bankers. Ultimately, you have those who print the money at the head of everything. So we can, when we look at who is the source of the control over militaries, which control countries, all roads lead back to those who print the money. And if people understood the geopolitical situation and why certain countries are taken out, one of those reasons is because those countries are trying to disconnect from the dollar, which means the empire can't print whatever they want and fund whatever they want, and those people are taken out, like Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi,
right.
Syria. So, and then weather warfare, back to geoengineering, is used to facilitate that takeout, if you will. So, and again, as far as the military using weather as a weapon, we have military documents owning the weather from the U.S. military, stating their desire to control Earth's life support systems for obvious reasons. Because people ask, why would they, meaning central bankers, those in power, why would they do this? And I would respond, why wouldn't they do this? Why in the world would we expect them not to use a weapon that gives them total control without countries even knowing they're at war? They can win a battle and bring a country to its knees without firing a shot or without anybody knowing they're even at war. So we would have to expect they would use such weapons.
And when you can control markets as far as food supply too, that has a big impact too, right?
Huge impact. And we see the disaster capitalists. Again, that's another layer to this issue, but a layer that people shouldn't mistake as the primary layer. We will always have disaster capitalists like Monsanto and others that are multinational corporations that are buying up some of this droughted out farmland in various regions, and then the rains in many cases will resume. But there's a bigger issue, Billy, and that bigger issue is the fact that we have methane mass expulsion happening in the Arctic. We have headlines that they're trying to hide the fact that Arctic ice is on the verge of disintegration. And once that headline unfolds, if you will, then it's impossible to hide that headline, which makes it impossible to hide geoengineering, climate engineering. And once that happens and people around the globe know the degree to which they've been assaulted and their environment has been assaulted by global powers, I would argue at that moment we will have a paradigm shift. It doesn't mean our problems are over, but it means that we'll have populations around the globe in the streets looking for those who are responsible.
Right, and it's so disheartening to me that so many people don't realize what's going on. And then on the even flip side of that, you've got so many people that are not only in denial, but actually are blatantly the trolls on our pages are just relentless, and I don't think there's anything that brings out the trolls more than when I speak about geoengineering. Why is there such a I can see people not knowing, but why is there such a movement against us getting this information out, and why are we looked at as being such conspiracy theorists?
Well, that's how those in power want us to be looked at. So they've well conditioned the population to, whenever they hear that term, their eyes glaze over and they shut down like trained laboratory specimens or something. We need to get past that term,
right,
and understand that there's nothing theory about this. We have film footage of these tankers spraying at altitude and with nozzles visible and shutting on and off. Again, we have congressional documents, presidential documents, patents, everything I named.
Right.
So there's no theory about this. There's no discussion. But why is this issue so important? Because this is the defining issue. They control Earth's life support systems. They decide where it rains, how toxic it is, how toxic our air is. At minimum, at absolute minimum, with lab tests we have from around the globe right now, we are all being poisoned slowly but surely, regardless of the various agendas being carried out. That is the result. So no one can argue that there's anything benign about these programs. There's nothing benign. They're purely malevolent in nature. So the bottom line is that's why they'll try to hide this, because the moment the public knows and realizes that the huge component in the completely destructive weather, in the respiratory issues that people are having, the Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, that all this is directly and indisputably connected to what's being sprayed above, people are going to absolutely go ballistic, I would argue, and they're trying to keep that from happening as long as possible.
Yeah, and that's going to further unravel a lot of other issues that are going around
Yes.
on the globe. I mean, then you look at the whole, central banking, and then you look at the whole vaccine agenda, and I mean, it's like I saw the movie Big Short the other night, and it was about that whole mortgage debacle, and I just kept seeing parallels to that and what's going on in healthcare today, which brings us back to a question I wanted to bring up to you is now, why am I bringing this up to a group of chiropractors? Because it's not only obviously a detrimental agenda against the planet, but I look at what it's doing to human health. I mean, the days they spray, you got all the asthmatic kids coming in, you got people with allergies, you got people with headaches, and it's just almost like clockwork. But then you also touched on another huge one, which happens to be the issue with, cognitive disorders when people get older, i.e. Alzheimer's. You got kids with autism. Where does all that play in? And then my question is that part of the entire agenda? I mean, I don't want to go, that far if you don't feel comfortable with it, but is there a depopulation agenda associated with this whole thing? Or is it just basically climatic engineering to make money?
Let me wrap that into the beginning of your statements. First, you're exactly right to state that if we can expose climate engineering, it will drag everything else to the surface with it, everything. So for people to realize that they are not only expendable to the power structure, but in fact an increasing liability to the power structure, period. At this point, in regard to eugenics, we know that the power structure knows how lethal these materials are, and they're using them in unimaginable amounts. And we start to link together the.
But then I get this question from everybody. Well, what about them? What about their families? What are they doing to not poison themselves?
Well, again, we know that there's chelation methods available to the elite that aren't available to the rest of us, and that involves taking the blood from the system. I've spoken to a Norwegian researcher that's been in the facility, had the test or had the procedure done. The amount of metal that was pulled from his system was 1,100% higher than the top of the chart for what would be considered a upper level limit. So he was off the scale. If the elite did this once a year, they would exempt themselves from the immediate effects. But on a bigger picture sense, Billy, I would ask everybody to consider when they think that this couldn't happen because they wouldn't do this to themselves. Let's look at Fukushima, for example, which may kill us all if something else doesn't first. We have one facility out of 400 that can take out all life on Earth, and they're building 60 more right now, in spite of Fukushima being what it is, with no technology to fix Fukushima. It's a nuclear volcano. Why would they build enough nuclear weaponry to exterminate life on Earth 12,000 times over mathematically? Again, we have so many examples of what they have done to themselves. The use of depleted uranium ammunition, which is being used off the California coast right now, has been for 5 years. This is radioactive ammunition that leaves the area it was used in radioactive. The half-life is 4.5 billion years.
Right, right.
They're using it, contaminating the planet forever. So again, we're not dealing with sanity. It's important for people to understand that.
Psychopaths is basically what
exactly.
Yeah.
Their desire for total power and total control supersedes any other consideration, period. So again, back to the overall effects and where we're headed with, if these programs continue, the bottom line is that they're completely eroding the very foundation of life. And that's why this should be a priority issue to people. No matter what other challenges or problems we're looking at, we're talking about an issue that's affecting everything that lives with this bioavailable material that's raining down on us. We have peer-reviewed study now, Billy, on the bees, for example. Most people know the bees are collapsing. Most people understand the ramifications of that. We now have confirmation of what we have said at Geoengineering Watch for many years, that there's a bigger issue, and that issue is geoengineering with the toxic heavy metal fallout. We now have peer-reviewed study that shows the bees are dying from massive aluminum exposure. Any of your listeners can look that up. Just search bees aluminum. You'll find peer-reviewed study. Same with whales from around the globe. 1,000 whales were studied and showed jaw-dropping levels of aluminum in their tissue. So the bottom line is there's nowhere to hide from this. We have to deal with this issue.
Right. And it all goes back, for me, it's like being a surfer and noticing this and being part of the environment, I think so many people have gotten so detached from even being outside and being in the environment and being intimately involved with Mother Nature that, I mean, everybody's more interested in football and you know, Dancing with the Stars and their video games than they are with actually getting outside. Because to me, it's like, I don't know how people don't see it. And for you and I, it's just like, it's blatantly obvious. I just think, what I'm trying to build up to here is, what can we do? And because one of the big, people loved your talk last year, but they walked away. It was feeling like they're doomed. What is the positive aspect of us communicating this, and what can people do on a daily basis as an individual? Number one, we got to create more awareness, and then I'll talk about my last thing when we wrap this thing up. But what can people do? And what I'm trying to get to.
Certainly that's the bottom line. And I do always leave every dissemination with instructions, but often that's not heard because people's heads are reeling a bit from the gravity of this
issue. Glaze over.
Yeah, it is. But the bottom line is, yes, this is an issue that everyone can have a tremendous part in helping to change direction with. And the critical mass of awareness on this issue cannot be overstated, in that once we reach that point, once populations around the globe at every level, once military personnel, their families, people participating in these programs realize what they're doing, that's what's going to stop this issue from continuing on. So from people's own home computer, for example, at geoengineeringwatch.org, on the home page, at the upper left, we have links there, activist suggestions links, and what's called a flaming arrow link. The philosophy behind the title of that link is if you start a spot fire of awareness in circles that have not even heard about this issue, once people understand that this is affecting them more than anything else, then I would argue that that fire will burn on its own. The more of those types of fires you start, at some point we have a massive blaze that can't be put out by the power structure that media has to pay attention to. And again, that reaches us, gets us to the point where
media has to pay attention to it? I know the media is totally controlled. Why would they cover this? I mean,
unless there's such an uproar with the population that they no longer have a choice. And we're getting to that point. So if people, again, from their own home computer, if they mailed out credible data effectively to two people at the beginning day of a 30-day month, for example, and encourage those two to reach 2 weeks the second day and so forth, if that formula continued for 30 days, that's 5.5 million. If everybody took these steps, we would be at critical mass very shortly. And to go with that, and what that will help us do is we have a legal team now, Billy. We have 3 Canadian attorneys, 8 U.S. attorneys so far. We're getting close to filing suit in the U.S. and Canada probably even sooner. Canada, we hope in the next couple weeks, and the U.S. hopefully by the end of February. We have a PR firm that's got Washington or locations, offices in Washington and L.A. that's now hired and helping us with this effort. When we file this lawsuit, which will, I can't disclose all the details at this point. I'm not allowed to by the attorneys, but we have a strong team. We have people on that team that are in other organizations that are working behind the scenes. They're not ready to come forward yet. We have a lot of momentum. If the population would, instead of just looking and realizing this is going on, if they would help us to raise awareness with everyone around them, that increases the size of the wave that we're creating to try to break a hole in the dam that's keeping this issue from coming to light. So everybody can play a massive part in that. Any one of your listeners, again, could be the last pebble that causes the landslide to happen and wakes people up to this issue. So we need everybody's help, and everybody can make a big difference.
Okay, cool. And then just 2 more questions, and we'll wrap this up. The California drought, is it just cycles that we're going through, or do you feel in your heart at 100% that it's geoengineered?
It's not about what I feel.
Okay,
it's about
good.
Facts prove what the facts prove. And your question is valid. There's no question. Scientifically, meteorologically speaking, there is no question the California drought and other droughts around the globe are a direct result of atmospheric aerosolization, the introduction of fine particulates, nanoparticulates into the atmosphere, which, by the way, is creating a condition called global dimming, which means the blocking of direct sunlight, which is now at 30%. Try to get your arms around that. 30% of the sun's direct sunlight that reached the planet 5 decades ago no longer does. These particulates radically diminish and disperse rainfall. Doesn't mean that there's not deluges in other places because you cause that moisture to migrate and it comes down somewhere else in a deluge. But when we have satellite imagery of the storm track upstream from California being radically aerosolized constantly, relentlessly, there's no question that is a direct causal factor for the lack of precipitation in California. Climate science proves it. What the aerosols cause too many condensation nuclei. The droplets don't combine and fall as rain. They simply migrate further where they come down in a deluge elsewhere. So absolutely no question scientifically, the drought in California is a direct result of climate engineering. We can speculate as to their agendas, whether California is just a climate sacrifice zone or a target. But either way, whatever the agendas are.
Why wouldn't it be a target with probably some of the best farmland on the planet? And if you can have those farmers go belly up, and then you have somebody like Monsanto come in and buy up all the, or other sources to buy up the desperate real estate, and then we can turn the water back on, and then we're back to business as usual with now not organic products. We're going to pump all the GMO because we own the land. I mean, is that too far-fetched?
Not at all.
Okay.
That's absolutely inarguable at this point. And also the water rights are being taken for the first time in California. It did not have such restrictions on groundwater before from private owners. So there's so many agendas being carried out at once.
Well, how much groundwater is left is the question.
So much groundwater has been pumped globally that it's affecting sea level rise. Try to imagine that.
Wow.
So again, in many areas, people think just recharge as soon as the rain falls. This is not the case. You have many aquifers that are literally left over from the ice age. They're on alluvial fans and so forth that are not recharge areas. So it's not just going to come back. You have areas in Central California that are sinking over an inch a month. The ground is sinking because of the lack of groundwater. It's affecting the California aqueduct. I mean, we're talking about cataclysmic processes here, Billy. And I was in Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom's office 2 years ago presenting data that this would happen. The magnitude of this drought had to happen if they continue this aerosolization. It's exactly what has happened. It couldn't not happen given the conditions we have. And we have people at the Capitol like Newsom, Lieutenant Governor Newsom. We have congressional people that absolutely know this is going on. I've been told at the Capitol by a congressional aide some months back, quote, "We all know what's going on. We don't know what to do." So while everybody's pretending this giant elephant in the sky of constant aerosol spraying is not going on, the ship is sinking. It's sinking by the day. The immediacy of our situation can't be overstated. We need everyone to join in this battle. If we could expose climate engineering, we could stop it. If we can stop it, that would be the single greatest leap we can take in the right direction for the human race and all life on Earth.
Great. And last but not least, I'm really excited for you to meet some of the people speaking this year from a company called Cytodetox. Because I have my lab work done, and my blood and my brain were loaded with not only mercury, but also lead and obviously tons of aluminum. And as we know, that's going to cause major neurological and cognitive disorders as people age. So I've taken an effort to detoxify. You know, I mean, if you're going to be breathing this stuff in, you got to do something about it. So I've been using this product now for 6 months, and I'm looking forward to having that blood work redone and seeing some improvement. But my memories, what's actually come back amazingly over that 6-month period. But it's not an easy cleanse. It's a matter of using these drops and then eating impeccably clean, and you've got to do a lot of preparatory cleansing in the beginning of the phase of the clearing. But I'm excited for you to meet them, and that's, again, another positive motion people can take to contribute not only to helping their own health, but their family's health. Because, again, people feel so desperate. It's like, what can we do? We're, like, doomed. But like you said, probably the elite do the chelation, and this is just another form of clearing, which will get the job done without having to be hooked up to have chelation done intravenously for 3 hours once a week. So
it's important. I mean, there's a lot to do with proper methods. I fully agree with that. And again, what they need to understand as well, these metals are, of course, all toxic in and of themselves. Aluminum, obviously, highly toxic. Mercury, highly toxic. When you combine these metals, for example, mercury from vaccinations or fillings, we're breathing it from the burning of coal-fired power plants. When you combine mercury and aluminum, for example, we have a study on those two metals. Overall toxicity, it's called synergistic toxicity, can increase as much as 10,000%, 100 times worse than either metal is separately. So again, the lethality of what's happening, what we're being exposed to, can't be overstated, and we all need to join together in this battle. And if we could bring this forward, as you correctly stated, Billy, it would drag everything else to the surface with it.
It'd be the first domino, maybe, huh?
The biggest of all,
yeah,
no question.
So. I mean, and we're really hitting the vaccine thing hard this year too, because we've got that mandated now in California. That you got to get your kid poisoned before you can go to public or private school, which to me is like that's beyond going past anything government should have their control of. Yeah.
And for people to remember, again, no matter what we do, on the aerosol spraying operations, even if you stayed at your own home in the middle of the wilderness, is where we live in Northern California, we're not exempt to sucking in heavy metals in every single breath. We can't hide from it, poisoning our foods, our soils, contaminating the whole web of life. So we're, this issue again. If we could, that's the reason I'm focused on this issue. I believe it to be the underlying foundational pillar on which everything else depends. So I hope we have everybody's help. And if we all join hands on this, Billy, we could yet expose this issue and bring everything to light with it.
All right, and just in closing, I've always thought, is there some way we could have some type of respiratory apparatus that we could wear that would filter that stuff out? But again, that might be a little bit overkill. And I've also thought, surfing is a very highly respiratory demanding event, and it's like, I can't wear a gas mask surfing, but that would definitely create some awareness. People's watching you walking around with a gas mask on. But have you ever thought of anything, or is there any type of technology out there that would filter the air enough so that you wouldn't get that exposure?
Conventional filters will not pull the nanoparticulates out. That's why they go under the radar with all state air quality testing, because those testing mechanisms test for PM10, 10 microns, or PM2.5, 2.5 microns. We're talking about particles exponentially smaller. They go right through any of that type of filtering mechanism. So, but masks could help to some degree, because sometimes those particles can coagulate into larger clumps, and it would filter that out, and it would certainly send a message. I don't argue with that.
Right.
But the bottom line is we absolutely have to bring this tissue to light, and the time frame we have, even if we could filter our air, Billy, the entire biosphere is being poisoned. So
you can run, but you can't hide, bro.
Right. We're seeing trees die everywhere. The ozone layer. This is shredding the ozone layer for people who think the sun feels hot on their face. We're seeing UVB levels 1,000% higher than we're being told. That's 10 times higher. It's burning the bark off of trees. This is tearing the planet's life support systems apart, period, and poisoning all of us. So we simply have to deal with this.
All right, brother. I really, really, really appreciate you taking time out of your day in our efforts to literally change the world in the right direction, but through greater communication and just getting people awake to what's going on. Just want to send my love to you and everything that you do, because it's dear to my heart too, being a lover of the planet, a lover of people, and I'm really excited to have you at CalJam again this year.
Thank you, Billy. And we'll try to keep geoengineeringwatch.org again as a repository for data and information. There's no advertising, no politics, so will people use geoengineeringwatch.org as their reference site and share it with others.
All right, man. And I would like to do another podcast before CalJam to ramp it up, if that's cool with you.
Your call. I'm always here.
All right, brother. God bless you, and I love you, man.
Love you too, Billy.
Okay,
take care.
Bro. Peace out.
$7 can get you a romance novel, a #1 combo at In-N-Out Burger, a 12-pack of granola bars, a cup of green juice, or 1 month of access to the CalJam network. At CalJam, we take pride in the array of topics our speakers have covered over the past 8 years. With the CalJam network membership, most of our speakers' talks can be accessed. In our network, you can also find numerous seminars from the Dead Chiropractic Society's monthly meeting with over 100 chiropractors and some of the best speakers in the profession. The CalJam network is your all-access pass to CalJam and DCS workshops, videos, and chiropractic content. From past CalJam speakers to recent DCS seminars, the network is a great resource for anybody passionate about chiropractic health or global sustainability. So don't miss out! We upload new and exciting content monthly, which can stream on any device, even your smartphone. Join the CalJam network today for only $7 a month at caljam.org/network.
Rock and roll! Not just one child. I said, you change it for the school.
Not your emotion, their emotion.
Well, because everybody has a self-healing mechanism. We know that.
Your community is desperately waiting for you to show up.
Wake up out of your apathetic slumber. Tell the people all about the principles of chiropractic.
Is you are the vessel of the change.
Ability to move that keeps us alive.
What would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me?